Very warm welcome to this short presentation about studying philosophy and ethics at Liverpool Hope University. My name is Stephen Shakespeare. I'm one of the team of philosophers which is dedicated to teaching this subject. And over the next 15-20 minutes, I want to talk a little bit about what your experience might be if you chose to come and study with us. So I want to tell you something about us as a team, our approach, the kind of teaching you'll have, the kind of subjects that you will cover. Now, just to give you a little bit of context. So at Liverpool Hope, philosophy sits within the School of Humanities. So that school includes other subjects such as English, history, and law. And it's closely associated, and it used to be a department joined with the study of religion and of Christian theology. And many of our students choose to combine two of those subjects. You'll also find that some of our teaching is shared across the team of people who teach religion and theology. We have specialisms, but we're also able to draw on the expertise of other members of that close team. There are two ways to study philosophy at Hope. You can do the single honours philosophy, ethics and religion programme, which has some dedicated elements to it, as well as drawing on the religious studies aspect of our school. And there's another presentation which looks in more detail at that single honours option. Or you can study philosophy and ethics combined with another subject. So half your degree, philosophy and ethics, and half another subject. As I've said, many of our students do combine philosophy and ethics with either theology or religious studies, but there are many other options. Many also choose another humanities subject, so they may choose to study it alongside English, for example. Not all of the subjects can be combined together, so it's worth checking the prospectus to make sure that the combination you want to have is available because of timetabling constraints. All the teaching in our subject takes place on Hope Park campus, which is a very lovely campus. There's a picture of one of the older parts of it here. We have very good teaching facilities, and everything's within easy reach. It's not a massive campus sprawling over different blocks. We're in the suburbs of South Liverpool. The campus is very compact, very easy to find your way around. If you study one of the fine arts subjects or music, something like that, you will have lectures on our other campus, the creative campus, but buses are laid on, and that's a fairly easy journey. But for philosophy and ethics, everything takes place at Hope Park. So let me say something about the teaching structure, which is common to all of our subjects. And obviously we do the same in philosophy and ethics. You'll find a combination of different styles of teaching and different settings. And there are three main ones I want to talk about. So there are lectures. These last for about 50 minutes. They are led by the tutor, and they are generally our opportunity to give you the fundamentals of the subject, to give you the framework for understanding the key theories and key ideas. It says for religious studies here, but for the same is true for philosophy and ethics. They're taught in around groups of around 40 students. And in the first year, you have 3 lectures per week in philosophy and ethics. The second type of class is seminars, usually in groups of around 20. And these allow you to work together more closely, to discuss texts, to discuss other materials, to work on problems together. So facilitated and led by a tutor, but with much more opportunity for discussion. And you have 2 of those each week. It's also an opportunity to occasionally engage with academic skills, such as essay structure. And then we have tutorials. So once a week in philosophy and ethics, you meet with your personal tutor, again for about 50 minutes. We are usually reading a text together, which you prepare in advance, and it's a great opportunity for us to go into much more depth, discussing the actual arguments of philosophers. You get to know each other, and your tutor gets to know you as well. The tutor has a really important role in being there as a point of contact and support, alongside any of the other staff on the course, but your personal tutor is a particular source of support for you. One of the things about our course is that we pride ourselves on knowing people individually. You're not just a number if you come here. We get to know you by name. We get to know who you are, what you have particular strengths in, where you can improve, and our feedback on your work reflects that. We have office hours, which are particular times during the week where you can find us, and when our doors are open, and actually generally even outside of those office hours, you'll find us very accessible by email or dropping in person. So it's really important to us that you feel supported, that you get to know us personally. So what kind of things do we cover in the curriculum itself? Well, in year one, it's very much a foundational year, covering really key areas of philosophy. Some of you may have done some philosophy prior to coming to Hope, whether informally or as part of an A-level course or something like that. So some of the topics, if you've done that, you might find familiar, but obviously we try to take those into an extra level of depth. And if you've not covered these before, don't worry, we don't assume that you have. So we look at ethics. This is a major field of philosophy. We look at the concept of moral good, moral evil. We look at theories as to what counts as good or bad conduct, or good or bad decisions, or what a good person is. We look at all sorts of theories, their differences, we evaluate them, we test their strengths and weaknesses, we see how they work out in practice. So many philosophers have thought about what it is to lead a good life or to make good decisions. And we look at the basis for that. Is there any such thing as an objective standard of right and wrong? So we try and step back from immediate ethical questions to look at the foundations of that. And of course, that's a very typical thing philosophers try and do. We try and step back and look at the foundations of our ideas of truth, of goodness, of beauty, of value. The next topic that's mentioned here is free will and determinism. So questions about whether our choices are genuinely open or free, or what freedom actually means, or whether they're determined by cause and effect. Again, that's another typical thing philosophers do. If we ask, is the will free? We need first to step back and ask, what do we mean by freedom? All of these words and key ideas we're using every day and thinking about perhaps a little bit, but we don't necessarily step back and take that time to really go into them in depth. And that's, again, something we want to do. Epistemology is the philosophy of knowledge. How do I know things? Is it based on experience? Do I know things innately through reason alone? What is the foundation of knowledge and how do I justify it? It's a really good topic to think about in these days of increasing information overload, where we need to think critically about what is true and what is not and how we know things. And then existentialism and the meaning of life. Existentialism is a name for a group of philosophers and philosophies which look at the nature of life as an arena of choice and struggle, where perhaps the meaning and foundation of our values is not apparent to us, where life may seem absurd, and yet we have to choose and take responsibility for shaping our life. So that's a really interesting area to get us thinking, much more about those bigger questions about death, about the existence of God, about the meaning and value of our choices. A few details are given here about the kind of assessments that we use. I won't go into each one of these in great detail, but I hope you can see that we use a variety of assessments. We have a portfolio of tasks associated with those small groups. They run through the year, small writing tasks and slightly longer essays. There's a group presentation. There's a longer essay which stands alone. And there's a kind of interesting creative project on epistemology and existentialism, asking you to kind of produce materials for teaching those subjects. So a variety of forms of assessment, which we prepare you for, we guide you on, we give you the criteria, which we're assessing those on, and we see those very much as not just assessments, but as learning experiences in themselves, where you're picking up skills and going deeper into the subject. You're learning how to research for yourself, to read, to go to the actual sources, and to evaluate them. And we give you feedback after each one. That feedback is full. It shows where you've got strengths, what you're doing right, and where you can look to make improvements. So we really try to support you through that process. And as I say, make it a learning experience. In the second year, the main strands are philosophy of religion, where we look at these really interesting areas about faith and reason, the limits of what we can say about ultimate reality, about the nature of God. And we look at some of the problems and alternative theories there are around God. Because, as we know, the notion of God, it's easy to say, we have all of our preconceptions about what God is or isn't, whether we believe in God or not. But when we think philosophically about that, we really have to test them and recognize the strangeness and complexity of those ideas. Political philosophy is another area where we look at some of the fundamental political theories, liberalism, Marxism, issues of democracy, anarchism. And again, we're looking at what makes sense in terms of how we shape our fundamental political views. So this is kind of going beyond the day-to-day questions of which party to vote for or which policy is right, and looking at the basis of those political ideologies and how they play out in questions of economics and economic justice as well. We also look at applied ethics, so taking ethical theories and applying them in depth to contested areas of our social and personal life, whether that's around sexuality, end-of-life issues, crime and punishment, and so on. Again, there's a variety of forms of assessment. The tutorial portfolio is there. We look at texts in more detail. It's an essay. And again, we guide you through those and support you. There's an exam at the end of the year, which is part of, as I say, the suite of assignments that we offered. So I know some people love exams, some people hate them with a passion. But again, we prepare you for those, and they are only a part of the assessment package. In the third year, we focus on, again, two areas mainly: the philosophy of mind and personhood, what it means to be a person, what it means to be human. And this throws up all sorts of issues about the human-animal boundary, about artificial intelligence, and whether that relates to our understanding of consciousness and personhood, and to really important issues as we go through the year of gender and race, how these have been constructed and formulated, and how they really affect our notions of selfhood. We'll also look at philosophy of religion in a much more contemporary perspective. So taking off from the second year, we then go into 20th century and really up-to-date contemporary thought about the nature of God and some of the key challenges there are about making sense of the language about God and how people have thought about it in radical new ways. Again, a variety of assessments there. And you'll see alongside the assessments based on the teaching, you'll also be doing an independent research project or dissertation. So in the final year, you get to shape your own research project, which is, I think, a really fundamental thing that caps off your degree and is something that people have the opportunity to really, really go into an area they're passionate about, find their own voice, and completing those projects or dissertations is a really good note to end on, because it's often the thing the students are most proud of accomplishing at the end of the day. And in that, I should say, you work one-to-one with a supervisor through the year to help you formulate your project and to support you in the research you're doing. Now, sometimes people ask, why on earth study all of these abstract intellectual questions of philosophy? What's the point of that? What's the use of that? You're not going to get a job in philosophy, or at least it's very unlikely. Well, as with a lot of humanities subjects, what we found is actually, because we're helping people to think, to become thinking, critical persons, rather than passive people who just take things on trust, and rather than just coming up with opinions that perhaps are not informed or haven't been thought through, you actually become a more rounded person. And because of that, more attractive to discerning employers. Employers are looking for people who are not just robots, but who think for themselves, who can think through problems, who can empathize and understand complex points of view and other people's points of view, who can communicate clearly, whether in written or in oral form, who can present an argument, again, in person or in writing. who can conduct independent research, and who can take on complex projects and structure them, communicate them, and work to deadlines to achieve them. So we have a very good employment rate for people coming out of philosophy and ethics, and they go into all sorts of things, whether it's teaching, journalism, civil service, law. We've had people go into working with people with mental health issues, into the police, into the Air Force. All sorts of opportunities are opened up. You can also, of course, go on into further study, which is something that we provide a pathway into here at Hope. There's an MA in Philosophy, Theology and Religion, which really draws on these synergies between the people teaching those things, the staff team. You have lots of shared interests and passions, and that MA really allows you to go into those in much more depth. And there's also an MA by research, where you can formulate a much longer research project working with a supervisor, perhaps as a platform to going on later to doing doctoral work. But that's another opportunity which is there for you to carry on that individual research option. Now, one of the things that's important to bear in mind, I suppose, is what students think of this. In fact, that's a really important thing. You can look at student surveys and so on to get a sense of that. One of the important things we try and do is build communication and community. And these quotations from student evaluations, I think, reflect that. Teaching in the philosophy team always went above and beyond all expectations. We are serious and passionate about our subjects. We're serious about organising good learning opportunities for people. We also want to academically support you and pastorally support you. You're not just left on your own. You know, we are, I think, effective in reaching out to people and supporting them in all sorts of ways to help you make the most of this degree opportunity. The second quotation there says, the philosophy team at Hope are like a family. Well, family may be a good or bad thing, depending on your point of view, but obviously it's meant positively here. Everyone gets on well. We're able to laugh as well as studying. You know, it's important for us to have that atmosphere. You know us, you know, you'll get to know us. You'll get, I hope, to feel comfortable with us. And we'll be able to relax and then learn better. So that aspect of personal interaction, personal support, and the community feeling that we build in philosophy particularly, which I think you'll find in a lot of subjects at Liverpool Hope, it's really important to our team, something we've prided ourselves on over the years. Extracurricular opportunities. Well, actually, in a sense, part of the curriculum, because even in philosophy, we do have the odd field trip and the opportunity to look beyond the classroom. So, for example, each year we take people to Chester Zoo because we're exploring the ethics of how we relate to non-human animals and all sorts of issues about conservation, captivity, biodiversity, and the human responsibility for the wider world. So we don't feed you to the tigers, I'm glad to say, but we do take that opportunity to engage with the staff at the zoo to get their perspective, and then of course we look at lots of other perspectives and think about that critically. So we are looking for opportunities to take you above and beyond, if you like, just what's going on in the classroom, to connect with what's going on in the wider world. Down the bottom of that lowest photograph, you can see one of my colleagues, Dwayne, looking very relaxed there. I'm pleased to say. So I hope that gives you some kind of insight into what we cover in the course, the kind of teaching, the kind of assessments you'll experience, but I think also the kind of feel, if you like, that we try to create and the kind of community that we like to build. If you've got any questions, please do contact the university. There are some contact numbers and email, social media links there. And sometimes those questions can be passed on directly to one of the staff team. So I hope that we do hear from you. I hope that you will think seriously about Hope as a great place to do philosophy, and that we'll see you in our classes at a future date. Thank you for listening.